Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Able Voices podcast. I'm Dr. Rhoda Bernard, founding managing director of the Berklee Institute for Accessible Arts Education, and I am proud to present this podcast featuring disabled artists and arts educators. We are inviting artists with disabilities to be guest hosts for the Able Voices podcast. Today's guest host is Jay Manuel. Jay Manuel is a full-time music producer, content creator, and actor. He has worked with companies such as Coca and Snapchat, and his beats have been used by thousands of recording artists worldwide. Jay offers beats for sale, custom beats for artists and companies, content creation for social media campaigns, and much more. When it comes to working with his clients, Jay is very hands-on, and his hands-on approach sets him apart from others in the field. Jay's joy comes from seeing others succeed and being part of their journey.
What is going on, y'all? I am back again. It is Jay, and I am your guest host today for the Able Voices podcast, and I have a very special guest. I'm so excited to introduce who we have today. Give a warm welcome for everybody, and let us know who you are.
What's up, guys? I am Ditch the Ego. I am an artist, producer, engineer, entrepreneur, all of the above creative. I'm from Los Angeles, California, and I've been making music for over 15 years now. And big part of my brand, I appreciate you, Jay, for having me on. A big part of my brand is dealing with some disabilities. So I'm glad to be here today to talk about my journey as an artist, dealing with disabilities and finding my own rhythm to be able to live my dream regardless.
I love that. First of all, you have so much going on, and I love that you mentioned you're from Los Angeles because I just went to Coachella. Now, I know Coachella is not in Los Angeles. However, that was my first time going to California. Very sunny over there, super hot, okay? However, I really enjoyed it, so I just want to say that, and I got used to the time zone, the 3 hours behind for where I'm at, EST time. Anyway,
It's that
I
West Coast
also
vibes.
yeah, West Coast vibes. I was on my West Coast vibes. I had the outfits together, but this is not about me. So you talk about how your brand really focuses about the various disabilities that you have, and I know you talk about mental health, and that's something that I've just always been so just. I've always admired about what you've done with your artistry and things like that. So I want to go into when you speak on disabilities, what disabilities do you have that are impacting your daily life?
Well, to make a long story as short as possible, first off, I'm adopted, and my birth mother used drugs in utero while I was in utero as a baby while she was pregnant. So I from the get go, I was born with a lot of just weird things going on. Like my ears as a kid would get red hot and burn like they were on fire. I'd have to sit with ice packs on them, and just like weird stuff like that would happen. And by the time I was in middle school, I really couldn't function. I was diagnosed with severe anxiety, severe depression disorders. And it was very difficult for me to just even get up and go to school on a consistent basis as even a middle schooler, as a kid. So from as long as I can remember, to be honest, I was in therapy. I was in and out of outpatient treatment. So growing up as a kid, it was very difficult for me to just be a kid, to be honest. And nowadays, a lot of people talk about, oh, I'm anxious. I deal with anxiety. I deal with depression. But I'm talking about clinical anxiety. I'm talking about clinical depression. I'm talking about a very different world that I know Jay clearly understands what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And and so when I was a middle schooler, I was diagnosed with all these things, and then I was diagnosed with seizures. So a lot of brain issues were going on with just miswiring, essentially. And
Mhm.
and I grew up in Hollywood. I have two very hyper successful parents. They're very dedicated to their careers. They're both my mom's a creative and my dad is in the creative business. So I kind of grew up in the creative environment.
Mhm.
But they're my adoptive parents. They don't really have any disabilities. They're very blessed. They're very gifted and
Mhm.
lucky. So it was very hard for them to really know what to do. So I spent a lot of time growing
Mhm.
up, going from like doctor to doctor to doctor and things like that. And then I spent most of my high school years in residential treatment. And that was a pretty life-changing experience for me because the particular place I went to wasn't really like an institution per se. It was like a brotherhood almost. We lived on this ranch and it was only 20 of us boys. And it was like it was like a work study for more so than like an institution type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that really taught me how to live and how to be a functioning person. And I got on the right medications and stuff like that.
Mm.
And then I went to college, and I kind of, when I was in college, as I was, I was just becoming 20 years old, and I had a spiritual awakening, and that really changed my life. And I started really, understanding my own disabilities, because up until that
Mm.
point, I didn't really understand I had disabilities. I was completely unaware of this, right? I didn't understand that I had these mental obstacles, as I would call them,
Mm-hmm.
holding me back. And so I would, get frustrated in myself because I would, you know, try. So I'm not a quitter. I always get back up. And so I'd get back up and I'd keep going, and then I'd slip, and I'd slip, and then I'd be very hard on myself. And so once I had my spiritual awakening, things became very clear to me, and I was able to start seeing some of the right doctors and really started getting myself some help. And that was about 3 years ago or so, almost 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, my life has completely changed, and my music has since then become dedicated to helping people heal through the music and
Mm.
helping people, talking to people's souls and feeling like, hoping to be an inspiration and showing people that there is a way out. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's another side, and you just have to be patient with yourself, and you have to keep on keeping on. And so, as far as disabilities go, like I said, and growing up, I also went through a lot of really traumatic experiences that then I was diagnosed with some very severe PTSD disorders and symptoms. And so, that's also been very tough to deal with. But, my whole musical brand is about showing people you can live your dreams no matter what obstacles you have to face, and you just have to figure out what works for you and then be dedicated to that and keep pushing forward. So yeah.
Wow. Wow. There's so much to unpack there because one thing I love that you mentioned is because I've talked about this as well as how, people will be like, "Oh, I'm sad, so I'm depressed." And like as you mentioned, you being diagnosed with clinical depression, clinical, anxiety. I also am diagnosed with anxiety and depression, and so there's a difference between like being sad and depression. Like it's not like, oh, like so that is a good
Yeah.
point that you brought up, just on how that affects you, because especially when it comes to anxiety, like that's a everyday. I love when people are like, "Oh, don't be anxious about this," as if I haven't already, tried that one out. Like, "Oh, let me try not to be anxious today and see how that works out for me." Uh, I've been
Yeah,
trying.
it's not that's not how that's not it's not like flipping a switch, it's
Yeah,
it's it's not. And a lot of people, think honestly, a lot of people are blessed to be able to be able to do that. Like my dad, he's able to flip that switch. And so to him it
oh
is
well,
like,
yeah.
well, why aren't you, it's okay, just be happy. Like things are going good. Like what happened? Like and I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, well, like today is just one of those days, I guess. I don't know. The chemicals in my brain are just not feeling it or whatever. And
Yeah,
I mean, like, dude, like the thing is a lot of people too, you don't want to have these like obstacles. It's not something to be like, wearing like, oh, like, yeah, like, I'm happy to be depressed. Like, no, it's just like,
yeah,
it's like not something like if I didn't have to deal with that, that'd be awesome.
yeah.
But
That'd be great.
it
Yeah,
is what it is. It is what it is. And I want
yeah,
to say something really important on that too before we move on.
yeah.
That what you made me think of was that, dude, you know, it's I learned a long time ago that feelings are like, from a very wise man who was like a father figure to me.
Mm,
Feelings are like a check engine light on the car. So
mm,
if a check engine light goes on, what do? You look at the check engine light and you're like, okay, well, there's something wrong with my car. I got to bring it in and figure it out. Let's take care of the solution. The check engine light is communicating to you something about your car. If you just like don't look, if you just like put tape over the check engine light and you're like, ah, whatever, like I'm not going to deal with this right now. Like,
right.
then what's going to happen is your car is going to break down. And so
Yeah.
feelings are the same way. These feelings are like
Mm,
a check engine light in your car. You have to utilize feelings as a communication. They're telling you something about your life. And
yeah.
so, I've learned, as tough as my anxiety and my depression and stuff deal with are, and sometimes there are just those days where it just is that way for no real reason.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I try to think about, okay, what is this telling me about my life? Because we live in
Yeah.
a culture of like, oh, just don't be anxious, don't be angry, don't be this. Don't be. It's like, no, like
Yeah.
channel those feelings, figure out what to do with that stuff, and then you can help yourself succeed and get where you want to go. So I just thought that was important.
No, that I love that you brought up that point because that is so true. I do a lot of check-ins with myself and trying to navigate like what are my triggers and what's going
Yes.
on, with everything. That's because I
Self
also
talk. Self
self-talk.
talk.
I go to
Yes.
therapy. I've been going to therapy for about 3 years now, and that's something that we've been
It's
working on.
beautiful.
So it's definitely great to hear you talk about it, and then even hear you talk about it from like a male perspective too, because as you know, like
Yes.
mental health and all those things, like a lot of society and stuff, like men don't we don't really. I feel like it's not even like we don't talk about it. I just feel like we may not have the grace to talk about it, right? Like a lot of it is like, oh, we'll just like kind of get over it and push through. And so instead of acknowledging those feelings that we have, and then you end up being really angry because you're not
Yeah.
acknowledging all these things that you're going through. So I think it's
Exactly.
great for you and other people like us to talk about these things, especially in the male community, because it's important and something that's just not discussed.
Yeah.
So, oh, did you
Uh,
want to in on that?
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say on that topic too, like, dude, I agree 1000%. And
Yeah,
we live in a society now where I think men are expected to, always push through the men are not really quote unquote supposed to express their emotions.
yeah.
And honestly, a lot of men haven't been taught how to
How
express
to
their
express their
emotions.
emotions.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
And because it's not even like, a lot of parents teach their male kids, oh no, like just rub some dirt on it, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, you
for
like
real,
poke it like 6 places, and it's like, just put some Band-Aids. It's like, "Yo, I gotta go to the
it's fun.
hospital."
It's funny you say that. I actually I used to play really competitive basketball. I tore 3 ligaments in my right ankle, and it was like, oh, you'll be all right. It's just sprained ankle. It's all good. Like that's not what my parents said, but the team was like, yeah, like you'll be good. And so then I was just believed them, and I'm really good at pushing through. And so for the next 5 years, I walked around with 3 torn ligaments in my ankle, and
Yeah,
it was like no, like you can't do that. So I just I love that you brought that up because that is really, really important to me as well as an artist and with my brand is that
yeah,
helping men understand that there are a lot of men out there that are dealing with the things you're dealing with in silence, and
yeah,
it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to not to admit to yourself you can't do it all on your own because not
exactly.
nobody can, and
Yeah.
that's just very important. So yeah.
No, that's a really great point, and I wanna actually move into you talked about that you went to college. So, did you have any, like, background when it comes to, like, music production or learning, about recording or anything like that, or did you do something completely different in regards to your education?
Yeah, so it completely different. So I started making music when I was like 9 or 10 years old, type of vibes. So I really just got on the piano. I have perfect pitch, so I got on the piano and I just started putting sounds together essentially at like 6 years old. And so by the time I was like 9 or 10, I had just taught myself a lot how to use GarageBand and simple stuff on YouTube. And by 10 years old, I had my first self produced, mixed, mastered, recorded everything project on SoundCloud in seventh grade. And then it was just uphill from there. And it's funny that you asked that though, because I had a really interesting journey with my music relationship. My relationship with my music is, so when I was about 13 or 14, that's when I went to residential treatment. And so in residential treatment, I wasn't making music, I was focused on therapy. And so that was a couple of years too. Like I didn't leave residential treatment until I was almost 19 years old. And so it wasn't until like I had almost like a 4 or 5 year break almost of time where I didn't make music or anything like that. And so by the time I went to college just to get my generals done because I thought that was very smart just in case I do want to go back at any point. But my main goal was always the entrepreneurship side and with my music. And so when I went to college, I just kept learning, teaching myself off of YouTube. And like my dad is a manager, he's an agent, an executive in the industry. And so that's literally what he did for a living is help manage artists. And so, I go to him for advice advance. I go to him for advice a lot, and he's been able to help me a lot. But as far as the making music process, he doesn't know anything about that. And so, yeah, I've taught myself everything I know. I've never had any kind of quote unquote official training other than like band class in middle school and stuff like that. But like, as far as engineering and production, it's just all been off of passion and desire to make the greatest music as I can.
That's awesome. And I've been hearing that from a lot of artists just in general that I've talked to, and even for myself. I mean, I went to college, but I'm an entrepreneurship major. So, and that was like a last minute switch because I was started as a marketing major, but once they introduced the entrepreneurship major, I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely doing this entrepreneurship thing.
That makes way more sense. I didn't even know that was a thing. That's
Yeah,
really cool,
I
actually.
didn't either. Yeah, it was a new thing.
Wow, that's crazy cool.
Yeah, I'd also participated in the
Wow.
music business program that we had. I didn't finish it because it was going to make me graduate like much later, but I did most of the classes and got to network. Anyway, it's just interesting because with music, a lot of it is an experience thing. Like you just have to go do it. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like you can learn formal things, and it's not to say that it's not good to educate yourself on the formalities and like specific things that you need to know, especially for certain concepts like maybe engineering and things like that. I feel like engineering is very technical, so you might want to, brush up on some things to learn about that. In general, though, I found that just going through the experience of networking and just kind of working with other people has taught me a lot. And YouTube University is always nice.
Yes, yes, yes. I agree, and also I think that now in today's day and age, we've made the music making process a bit too complicated, and we overthink it because we have
Yeah.
so many plugins and so much technology and so much cool stuff that we can like do that I think sometimes people overthink it too, and it's important to remember that in my opinion, making music is really just about making it an extension of yourself. And it doesn't have to be very complicated. A lot of times your most favorite, like I always use Blinding Lights as a very good example because it's recent, and everybody's on their minds and things like that. That song is a very simple song. The structure of that song is beyond simple. It's like he probably made that song in a couple of days. Like that thing is so simply structured. And it's just that he's so good. The Weeknd is so good at weaving melodies together, simple melodies together, that with his vocals as well, by the way, that that's all it needs. It doesn't need like a ton more stuff. And so, yeah, I think it's very important for creatives to remember that it's great to know all these skills, but back in the day, they didn't have any of this. You had 8 tracks, you have 4 tracks. You know what I mean? Like you had 2 tracks. You just so it's important to remember, just get creative with it, make music off of simple sounds, and don't sometimes simple is better, less is more.
No, I agree. And so, speaking of music and experiences, you've got some music for us today that we're going to hear. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes. So this song is called Great Things Always Come, and it features two of my close artist friends. One of them lives in the UK, actually. His name is Nathan. So shout out to Nathan. He's on Instagram, Cloud Sampling, at Cloud Sampling. Also featuring a friend of mine named Mannequin, who's out of New York City, and you can go find him on Instagram at Mannequin Music. And then the beat is produced by all of our mutual friend. His name is Rich, but he goes by Miles Above, and you can find him Miles Above Productions, I believe is his Instagram handle. And this is a very special song because at the time, Miles Above and I, this was one of our first songs we made together, and he went to high school with Mannequin. So that's how he introduced me to Mannequin and was like, hey, I think you would be good for this song. So that's how we got Mannequin on the song. And then he also networked me with Nathan. He knew Nathan through Instagram as well, and he also thought he'd be good for that song. So I was like, great, this is perfect. And that song really just turned into a magical song. It not only turned into a song, it turned into a mantra for myself. It's great things always come, something that I always tell myself especially when I'm down and I'm struggling. And it created some deep friendships. Those are my closest friends in the music industry at this point, as far as especially as far as networking with people who don't live in my city. And it also really became a brand slogan for me, for my DTE brand. And so that became almost like my very short mission statement in a sense, like great things always come. So, there's a animated music video of it on YouTube. You can find it at Ditch the Ego. And the song is on all platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube title, everywhere. And it's a very special song to me and all my friends, and I'm grateful to be able to play it.
Wishing nowadays you would talk to me, girl. Wishing you would not force me to move. On to different people in my life all the time. What a fucking time to be alive. Grateful I wake up, I see the light, how it shines. Great things always come to me in time. I feel mesmerized by how you talk to me, girl. I feel mesmerized by how you move. Wishing nowadays you would talk to me, girl. Wishing you would not force me to move. On to different people in my life all the time. What a fucking time to be alive. Grateful I wake up, I see the
Thank you so much for sharing this song with us, and I love the name. You know, great things will always come. So I gets me excited. Okay, thank you so much for yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. I want to lead into the fact that do you have some current music? I mean, you're super active right now, and you have been. Is there anything currently that you're working on, or that we should be aware of that's coming out soon?
Yeah, well, I'm dropping music every week. Thank you to Russ. Shout out to Russ. Anybody out there who is listening right now, if you haven't heard of Russ, or if you have and you haven't studied Russ, go study him, find his YouTube interviews. This dude is giving out complete free game. He's telling you how to do it without a label as an independent artist. He's literally laying it out for you. And so that's what Russ did. For anybody who doesn't know, he dropped a song a week for about 2 years, and then finally one of the songs really caught, and then what I call the domino effect occurred, and all the other songs that he'd been releasing caught as well. And so that is how Russ really, really made it to the next level for himself, into the mainstream. And so I'm dropping a song every single week. And this week I have two really big projects in the works right now. I'm going to be launching my own podcast, actually, that's going to be very mental health based, just talking about, honestly, whatever I want. But a lot of it will be drawing from my own experiences and telling people what I'm dealing with and how I'm going through things and how they can, go through, deal with things. And, sending people to some of the people that I love to watch. There's, like Jordan Peterson and Andrew Huberman and Lex Friedman. These are all great, great YouTube channels, podcasters that talk about, a variety of things, from mental health to, physical well-being to, sports to whatever, politics, whatever it is. So I'm going to be starting my own podcast, and I'm also I'm working on my debut studio album as well. So that's going to be coming out later this summer, and I'm super, super, super excited to be able to show everybody what I've been working on for the past few years. It's a great time.
That's so exciting. And speaking of having a great time, what kind of advice would you give to a young artist, up and coming artist, producer, creative with a disability specifically? What advice would you give to them?
My advice to them would be that Rome wasn't built overnight. It's going to take some time, right? So everybody's journey is different. The journey is the destination. Just understand that if you're a creative or you're any kind of entrepreneur, anybody, to be really honest, is if you're following your passion and you're engaging in your dream, that is a win in and of itself, because you're showing up for yourself every single day. And it doesn't matter how small of an increment of progress you're making. One of my favorite analogies that I learned, again, from this wise father figure of mine, is that change and growth are like a tree. If you think about it, you look at a tree, you're never going to watch the tree grow. You can't sit there and watch a tree grow. It's just not going to happen. But the tree's growing. And also, you're not going to like ungrow a tree. Like, once a tree gets to a certain height, you're not going to bring it back down. Like, you're not going to reverse the growth. And so something I love that from that is that, change and growth is like a tree. Sometimes you're not going to see it. Sometimes you're not going to feel it. It's going to be slow, very slow. But just know you can't go backwards. Like, you can't erase the work that you've done, even if you make one little mistake, because everybody's human and makes mistakes. And you have to be patient with yourself, because if you have disabilities, whether they're mental, they're physical, regardless of what they are, it is going to take you more time than a lot of other people to do basic things and to learn certain basic things as well. And so just remember that as long as you're showing up for yourself, and the art or whatever you're doing is great to you, and you're feel like you're engaging in in becoming your true self, that that to me is the win, because honestly, that can't ever change. It doesn't matter if you have all the success in the world, regardless of what you're doing. You don't want to lose that passion for doing what you love, regardless of even if it is something that you become very successful at. So I always encourage anybody that it's just do it. Don't worry about the outcome. Don't worry about whatever. Just worry about the fact that you're showing up for yourself and doing what you love.
Wow, that is some great advice. Shoot, I gotta take that because that is definitely something I had to get past. It's like how long I felt like it was taking me, but also recognizing that I do have disabilities, right? So, like, I had to remember that my journey is gonna look different than a lot of other people around me, and giving myself more grace and just,
Yes.
you know,
Grace
uh,
is important.
yeah,
Grace is so important.
and
I like
celebrating
that you said
those
that.
wins, celebrating the wins, no matter how big, small, in between and things like that. So that is some really great advice and something I've definitely had to work on even now. So I appreciate you being on this podcast and doing this interview with me. It was super fun. This won't be the last time that we, have a talk like this. However, I just want to say, for anyone that's listening to this, like, I really hope y'all soak in everything that he said because he really dropped some gems. And I'm just so grateful to be able to have this conversation with you. And I appreciate you taking the time out of your day today to have this talk with me.
Well, I'm grateful to you, Jay. You're an inspiration to myself. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, hey guys, listen, I know this guy. Like he ain't let nothing stop him. Like he went to Coachella the other weekend. They brought him there. So it's like, you're an inspiration to me. I feel very blessed to be able to be on this podcast with you and to be able to give away a lot of that game because, I don't want to take credit for it. It's Russ, and it's all the wise men that I learned from in my life and had the blessing to be around. And it is, for me, the music and what we do is deeper than just you producing beats and me making a song, because we're good at that. We know that. Like what it's about is like, what are we doing with that? Like, this podcast that you invited me on, like, this is something meaningful. This is something that, people can really take something from and heal with. So I appreciate everyone who's listening as well. Don't be too hard on yourself. I love you guys all, and you guys can follow me on Instagram, social medias, everywhere at Ditch the Ego is my handle on basically everything, and you can see my website at ditchtheego.com if you can't find anything. Everything's there. So please do support. I love y'all. Stay strong. Great things always come.
Awesome. And could you actually spell out your name, to Ditch the Ego? Can you spell that out just in case for, people that are listening?
Yeah, it's at DITCHTHEEGO. Ditch the Ego. Sir.
Well, y'all, it has been a great pleasure to be able to be a guest host for this podcast. Thank you all for sticking with me on these episodes that I've done. I hope y'all have enjoyed them as I have. And if you'd like to keep up with me, you can at Mini Producer. That's MINIPRODUCER. And also my website is miniproducer.com, MINIPRODUCER.com. I just appreciate everybody who is not only supporting me being this guest host on these episodes, but also the podcast in general, the Able Voices podcast. Thank you. Thank you so much for letting me do this, and to all the guest hosts that y'all have on here. It's truly appreciated.
Able Voices is a production of the Berklee Institute for Accessible Arts Education, led by me, Dr. Rhoda Bernard, the founding managing director. It is produced by Daniel Martinez del Campo. The intro music is by Kai Levin, and our closing song is by Sebastian Batista. Kai and Sebastian are students in the arts education programs at the Berklee Institute for Accessible Arts Education. If you would like to learn more about our work, find us online at berkeley.edu/BIAAE or email us at BIAAE@berkeley, that's LEE.edu.